Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null, broadcasting and video streaming live from our studios in New York City. We have a very powerful hour ahead of us, and you can watch this program by going to Progressive Radio Network website. For those of you who are just able to listen to the program in the evening, you can watch it then. And for the thousands who download it at night and watch it, thank you very much for the feedback and sharing this information. Also, for those of you who want to listen by your telephone, let me give you this number, 712-775-6850, 712-775-6850. Today, I'm going to do health and nutrition, but then I'm going to do a special mini report on a long investigative report. In fact, it's about 40 pages. I'm only going to do about 6 pages, but we have it posted. It is called Fluoride, the Deadly Deception. And in it, we look at the actual science, the public health issues that are not being honestly addressed. And if they were, we would have no fluoride in any community water in America, around the world. And because we're heard all over the world, in all the countries of the world, please go to our website, prn.fm or Progressive Radio Network, and download the article. And not only did we write it for the ability to change our community laws and rules involving fluoridation of our water, but also to use in a court of law. So if you had to go to court, you have the footnotes and the documents to be able to do so, and I believe win, as many people have. Now, my guest in the second part of our program is Dane Wigington, and Dane is going to talk about geoengineering. Why? Because right now, California has had the worst fires in its entire history. People have died, thousands of homes have been destroyed, over 1 million acres destroyed, and this is the new norm. But all over the internet, you see these photographs showing a beam of light and then some kind of fire. So the idea is that the government is, or someone is, intentionally setting these fires. Now, arsonists, yes, arsonists have set fires. But that's not what we're talking about. So we're going to ask Dane to separate out the reality from the internet fictions. And so he'll be on. Also, we're going to ask him about the environmental flu. People claiming that they are sick with fatigue and congestion and flu-like symptoms after aerial spraying. And is that correct? And if so, what's in the aerosol being sprayed? And why are they spraying in any case? Is it to form some form of particulate matter in the environment that would cause sun's rays, instead of hitting the ground, to bounce back? We don't seem to have any information from the government to legitimately explain all these planes flying over Texas, over California, and other states. We want to know, because we're paying for it, and our health's at risk if these nanoparticles get into our bodies. We're going to explain nanoparticulate matter from the chemtrails. Mind you, for decades they said chemtrails didn't exist. Then they had to acknowledge it did when some pilots, or whoever it was, took photographs from inside these reconditioned planes to show it was all about chemicals being sprayed. But then they said it was non-toxic, non-harmful. All right? But they didn't tell us the list of all the chemicals. So we're going to get to all that today, and I'm giving him extra time. So that's what we're going to get to. We have a lot to share. I don't think we'll get today to 2 video audio clips, one about fighting the Bayou Bridge pipeline, how poor people in Louisiana are not only poor, but they're also being poisoned, and now their entire ecological system, which many of them rely upon for a living, like the crayfish fishermen and the shrimp fishermen, it's all being destroyed or put at risk. So that's one. And another one is, you're killing us. This is some Louisiana residents showing how for dozens and dozens of years, oil refineries lining the state have been spewing into the water and into the air, including DuPont, known carcinogens, and then you see all these people who have a very high incidence of cancer, even if they have none of the other risk factors. So we're asking, shouldn't we be concerned about the lives of Americans, especially poor Americans, African-American Americans, down in Mississippi and Louisiana, where these refineries are, and no one's advocating for them. No one's going in there to try to stop this carnage. We will. And I'll actually be there interviewing these people, filming them, both in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas, the Maryland, Pennsylvania, the gas hydrofracking. We're going to ask people all over Pennsylvania, what has happened to your water and air? Have you noticed a difference in diseases? So that starts next week. I'm going back out on the road. Always begin our program with the latest on health and healing. And this is from Columbia University's School of Public Health, and it says, children are highly vulnerable to the health risks of changing climate. Quote, young children are far more vulnerable to climate-related disasters, and the onus is on adults to provide the protection and care that children need. This is according to Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health, published in the peer-reviewed journal PLOS Medicine. And they say that the climate is changing all over the planet, adversely affecting 2.3 billion, with a B, children. And so, quote, it is affecting their cognitive, immunologic, and psychologic conditions. Well, just imagine this week in Europe, you had the hottest day ever recorded in history, or civilized history, in a country, 137 degrees. You had the hottest day ever recorded within the last 5 days in the United States, in California, in the desert, Death Valley. You've had hottest days in Switzerland, in Russia, in the Arctic, in Greenland, just in the last 5 days. So what happens when your body is young, your immune system is not fully developed, and now you're being stressed? You're being stressed because it's too hot for your ability to cool itself. You literally cannot sweat enough to cool the body, and that's why we sweat. Perspiration helps cool the body. So you put these very fragile metabolisms and biochemistries at risk of heat stroke. Then the other side of that is a lot of these children do not have access to clean drinking water. In fact, one of the things we'll be filming in Africa in about 3 weeks from now is we're going to be filming all over Africa. In fact, every country in the world that has a climate disaster we're filming. And from Antarctica to Arctic and the volcanoes, everything. And you have emerging now nearly 300 plus million people living who do not have access to clean water on a regular basis. What water they do have is frequently polluted. It either has snail larvae, so they get schistosomiasis, or they have malaria because it's in some of the monsoon areas. But clean water they don't have. And so there's a consequence. And who dies first, who's sick first? Babies, children, and seniors. So where are these people supposed to go? Now, if Gaddafi was still alive, if Libya was still a whole country, and the most prosperous country, the most educated country, the longest lived population, the most democracy of any country in the world. Now listen to that for a challenge. More democracy occurred in Libya under Gaddafi than the United States or Great Britain or Germany or other people who felt that he should be killed for their own reasons, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. But you had more rights as a woman there. If a woman was insulted in Libya, you could be arrested. But our neighbor in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, not so much rights for women. So what would happen if Libya was vital today? Could you imagine the world's largest human-made aquifer water project was under Gaddafi? And that would be giving water throughout all of Africa. And then there would be a safe place for people to go to, knowing they would not be raped, not put into the town squares, hung up by their feet. I put these photographs on my website, and sold as slaves. There would be a home for these people. So, who's going to take them in? Where are they supposed to go? Where are they supposed to stay? If the world went nuts with 4 million refugees in Europe, what do you think is going to happen when you have 300 million? Just telling you, it's going to happen. Food shortages, riots. So that's the consequence of global warming that is not honestly and properly addressed. Even a quick meditation aids in cognitive skills. This is from Yale University and Swarthmore College, and it was published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience, and it says this: college students who listen to a 10-minute meditation tape complete simple cognitive tasks more quickly and accurately. That's good. Quote, "We have known for a while that people who practice meditation for a few weeks or months tend to perform better on cognitive tests. But now we know you don't have to spend weeks practicing to see improvement." This is from Yale University's Hedy Kober, a professor of psychiatry and psychology. So, what's the takeaway message that we can all benefit from? Why don't we go online and find some nice meditative music that suits your preference? And now you can listen to a bit of a song to see whether or not it aligns with what you find calming. For some people, it's the sound of water and thunderstorms. For others, it's waves lapping against the shore. For others, it's crickets and night creatures. And for others, it's meditations and soft music. Each person has their own preference, but they all have something in common. All forms of meditation that relax you and de-stress you are good for you. And now this Yale study shows it improves your cognition. The other night, a couple I don't know them except they used to come to 83rd Street when I had my office there for about 27 years, and they would come by and say hello. And they live at a ashram over on 86th Street, and they invited me to dinner. So I went there the other night, and I told them I eat very little, and I watched them in the kitchen as they were making a meal, and they took me for a tour through the building. It was empty. It's not used very often, and they've lived there about 35 years or so. But what was enjoyable about the evening, aside from their company and talking about issues that we're all involved in, was that there was background meditation music. And it's on all the time. They love the music, and they put it on in the morning when they get up, and when before they go to bed at night, they turn it off. And it just reminded me when I read this study, wow, how cool is that all day long you're living in an environment that you enjoy, you're doing work that you feel is spiritually in alignment with your life needs. You're not a materialist. You're not a careerist. You're not rushing like crazy to get something done. You're moving through life with a nice flow. And all the while inspired by these chants and the energy of the music. So why don't you try this? Why don't you try putting on some meditative music of your choice and reading, and see if you can focus more on your reading when you have nice, light background, quiet music, instead of going home, turning on a computer or television or on the phone, where everything becomes overstimulated. Just a thought. New emerging research suggests that the Montmorency cherry, that's your tart cherry, can help enhance gut health. This is from the University of Arkansas, and it's published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry. And it's saying that this is the first of its kind human trial of adults, and they found that the gut biome was positively influenced by trillions of bacteria that live in your intestinal tract, the good bacteria, that can be bad depending upon your food and diet. But these microbiome really did well when they had the Montmorency tart cherries. Now, we know that the Montmorency tart cherry is outstanding for people with pain, any form of localized pain, lower back, neck, migraines, arthritic pain, fibromyalgia, gout. In fact, I remember once got a call. It was a Saturday, and I was just rushing out to do my morning show on WMCA. If many of you might remember who listened back then, that I did a 4-hour show from 10 to 2 on WMCA, 1975 and 6, just before I came over to WPI. And afterwards, there'd be this huge conference room up on the second floor, and I would bring down huge trays of food. I'm talking about like 50 pounds of food of different types, because there'd be all these wonderful volunteers who would come in, and we'd answer the mail. And we'd spend about 4 or 5 hours just answering the mail. That's when a woman gave me a letter from G. Garbo from Sutton Place. Yeah, that was Greta Garbo. And Gloria Swanson, and all these old celebrities would write. So it was interesting. Oh, can I have this letter? Sure you can. So a lot of people took home some letters just as a souvenir. But one of those days, I get a call, and it was Barry Farber, and he was on at night, on the overnight. And Barry is a complete gentleman, and he is simply one of the brightest human beings I've ever met. And he speaks, reads, and writes fluently 32-plus languages. That's a lot, including Russian, Chinese, 2 types of Chinese, and he can carry complete conversations. And he came in and he said, Gary, he said, I got a problem. I said, what's that, Barry? He said, I've got gout. It's so bad, it took me an hour this morning when I was having breakfast, to get up, and I couldn't get up. I was sitting on the floor. My foot was swollen, my toe was pulsing, and I said, what did you have for breakfast? He told me. I said, well, that's your problem. He said, well, okay, I won't have that anymore. Well, what I can do? I said 2 things. Montmorency cherry, tart cherry, get someone to get it from a health food store, get the concentrate, which means that they've juiced the cherry, and then they wick off, evaporate about 50%. So you're really getting a thick, almost a syrup consistency, but that's when you get your greatest benefit. And take that with 500 milligrams of pantothenic acid. Okay. And he was in a great deal of pain. And about 10 o'clock that night, he called. He says, it's really remarkable. My pain's gone, the swelling's down. I said, remember, those are lactic acid crystals, the purines from the type of animal protein that you were eating. So when you give up sugar and wheat and dairy and meat, then you're not going to have that create. So it's just a little story from my memory box that came up. But for all of you with pain, Montmorency cherries. And finally, this is from Natural Blaze. And they're a good publication. I have a lot of respect for them. Bathing in chlorinated water may be worse for you than drinking it. All right? Here's what they say. I'll quote them from the current issue. Bathing in chlorinated water may be worse for you than drinking it because it bypasses your liver. Chlorine is the most widely used disinfectant in public water systems in the United States and around the world. It is also a toxic gas that has been used as a chemical weapon because it effectively attacks all living cells. Chlorine not only kills the bad bacteria in water, it also kills the good bacteria in our bodies and on our skin. So when you drink chlorinated water, it destroys your beneficial intestinal flora or gut bacteria. A wave of recent studies are beginning to understand how vital our gut flora is to your physical and mental health. These revelations have spawned a huge movement of eating fermented vegetables and taking probiotic supplements to help rebuild your healthy gut. Results of chlorine exposure to the skin are less discussed. Chlorine has been shown to diminish vitamin E, vitamin C, and polyunsaturated fatty acids in the skin, potentially resulting in eye and skin irritations. Some swimmers use vitamin C and E skin spray to combat rashes, but rashes appear to be the least of the health concerns stemming from topical exposure of chlorine. A Belgian study published in Pediatrics by researchers at the Catholic University of Leuven found that teens were 800% more likely to risk developing asthma or allergies if they spent more than 1,000 hours swimming in chlorinated pools compared to kids who usually swam in pools using a copper-silver disinfectant method. Spanish researchers at the Municipal Institute of Medical Research in Barcelona found that people who bathe in chlorinated water have a significantly higher chance of getting bladder cancer. Whoa. And researchers found that those living in areas with high chlorine content water who bathed in it regularly were 83% more likely to get a tumor than those in low chlorinated areas. And absorbing chlorine through the skin is thought to be more dangerous because it bypasses the liver, which filters out many harmful chemicals when water is swallowed. Scientific American reports on studies linking chlorine to rectal and breast cancer. So, first of all, thank you, Natural Blaze, for always outstanding work. And so that gives us a heads up. What can you do? You can buy a chlorine-removing water filter for your shower. Go online. There are hundreds of companies out there that sell it. Not expensive. $40 to $80. Get your best one, and they last about a year. That way you don't get the chlorine. Also, when you take a shower, the chlorine gas you're breathing it. That's not good. So that's important. That's the latest on health and healing. We're 23 minutes into our program. We're going to take a break and come back, and then I'll share the beginning of an in-depth, most comprehensive article you'll ever read on chlorine, all scientifically based. I didn't prepare this article as a lay read, meaning in a lay language. I put it into scientific terminology. Hopefully, you will use it to take before your town councils, your city governments, and say, here is absolute, irrefutable scientific proof. It has been fully vetted by scholars and fully vetted by lawyers, so you could use it in a court of law. Back in a moment with it. Everyone, the title of this report is Fluoride, the Deadly Deception. And one of our research editors, his name is Helen Paniski, did a lot of research on this, and we thank Helen for her contribution. More than half the world's fluoridated water is in the United States, one of the few countries that still practices this controversial procedure. The effectiveness of fluoride in preventing cavities in children is treated as gospel. It must be true because our cities are almost all fluoridated. U.S. Public Health Service, the CDC, the FDA, the Surgeon General, they're all supportive of it. So what could possibly be wrong with it? And they're telling us that, hey, it prevents cavities in children, and we believe in it. All right, 2/3 of Americans are medicated without their consent in amounts they cannot control, with impure waste materials from some of the most toxic industries in the country. How is it possible that the United States is still conducting what is essentially an unauthorized scientific experiment on its population in defiance of commonly accepted medical ethics? And why are teams of so-called experts still trying to spread the fluoride gospel around the world when a century of data proves unequivocally dental health has been steadily improving without fluoride? Fluoride's defenders have public opinion, reinforced by decades of propaganda, on their side. But a look at the scientific literature shows no scientific basis for their claims of fluoridation safety and effectiveness. The amount of scientific evidence that water fluoridation is not only ineffective in its stated purpose, but downright dangerous, especially to the young and infirm, is growing all the time. Over 250 communities worldwide have ended fluoridation since 2010. If it was truly essential to children's dental health, these areas would have seen a rebound in incidence of dental caries. Instead, the numbers have continued to decline, paralleling a worldwide decrease in tooth decay rates, even in countries that never fluoridated. Now, there's a National Research Council study. When American scientists defer to the Academy, they are referring to the National Academy of Sciences, the group of prominent scientists who essentially decide what comprises scientific orthodoxy. The National Research Council, comprised of members of the National Academy of Science, caused a subtle paradigm shift when they published their 467-page report reviewing the scientific literature on fluoride's health risks. Commissioned by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, after a 1,500-strong scientific union within the EPA, released a public statement against fluoridation. The National Research Council report was intended to diffuse a controversy that threatened to bubble over into public awareness, potentially dealing a mortal blow to the fluoride myth. EPA scientists were up in arms against what they saw as the politically expedient, unscientific decision to raise the acceptable fluoride concentration limits to 4 milligrams. NRC scientists, who in their last review of the literature in 1993 had nothing but glowing reviews of the substance in the current high concentrations, took no issue with the conclusions of the hundreds of studies they reviewed this time around that detailed fluoride's harmful effects. Their recommendation was that future researchers pinpoint at what dose the risks outweighed the benefits of fluoridating the nation's water supply. The question then was no longer whether fluoride was toxic, yes it is, but whether it was toxic enough to cause health problems in a significant number of consumers at the current maximum concentration levels of 4 milligrams/L. Fluoride has never been proven in a properly constructed double-blind study to protect against tooth decay, and unfluoridated communities and fluoridated communities alike have seen the prevalence of dental caries decline over the decades at approximately the same rate, putting the lie to the notion of fluoride as children's dental savior. But with 50 years of their reputation bound up in that notion, the Academy realized that they couldn't simply do an about-face on the substance safety and efficacy. Damning admissions about the toxicity of fluoride in the NRC report are thus couched in requests for more data, more precise data, or tighter experimental constraints reflecting fluoride's consumption at or below the current maximum concentrations. All the while, fluoride's boosters are never asked to produce the science they lack to support their rosy claims. Sounds a lot like the tobacco industry, doesn't it? We need more research. We need more research. Or asbestos. We don't really know. Or uranium mining trailings and the Navajo Indians coming down with cancers. Well, we're not sure. We need another 3,000 years of research. Then maybe we can come up. It's just all a fool's errand. The NRC ultimately recommended that the EPA reconsider its guidelines for the maximum acceptable fluoridation concentration in drinking water, which the agency set at 4 milligrams in 1985 over the protest of its own scientists. In 2011, 5 years after receiving the recommendations, it desired from the study it commissioned the EPA finally announced it would issue new guidelines. It has been over a decade since the National Research Council published its report. The EPA has still not issued new guidelines for safe levels of fluoride in drinking water. So what are they waiting for? All right, how much time do you need? We know how corrupt the EPA is. We know the people running the EPA have absolute conflicts of interest. We know they're all pro-corporatist. This is not in dispute. We also know, and I've had them on this program, many really conscientious scientists who refuse to be intimidated and silenced about what goes wrong at the EPA. There are scientists telling us that, yes, it is the neonicotinoids, pesticides, that is causing colony collapse in bees. Yes, and they go on to tell us other things that we should be concerned about. But then the regulators, who are appointments from coming out of the revolving door of industry, then they're the policymakers who squash it all. The Department of Health and Human Services finally lowered its recommendation for drinking water to 0.7 milligrams in 2015. But while the EPA continues dragging its feet on coming up with its own safe level for fluoride concentration, it has already let the cat out of the bag, publishing a review of developmental neurotoxicants that includes fluoride front and center in the list of, quote, chemicals with substantial evidence of developmental neurotoxicity. Quote, substantial evidence means more than one laboratory reported developmental neurotoxicity. Dozens of laboratories, in fact, have arrived, and we have all the studies from these labs, at the same conclusion. But until very recently, none of them had published their findings in the United States, where questioning fluoride orthodoxy remained a professional death sentence until very recently. Decades of American popular opinion hold that fluoride is not only safe, but so important to the dental health of the nation's children that to withhold it from them would be medical malpractice. But the Academy is starting to break ranks with the government. In a 2014 paper published in The Lancet, Harvard University researcher Philippe Grandjean added 6 industrial chemicals, including fluoride, to a list of developmental neurotoxicants especially harmful to the developing brain. In what was perhaps a subtle nod to the Academy's reluctance to challenge fluoridation dogma, he called for the formation of an international clearinghouse to coordinate research into these neurotoxicants and their role in the rising prevalence of neurodevelopmental disabilities worldwide. His paper has been cited by more than 100 scientific journal articles, suggesting that it has removed some of the stigma from studying the toxic effects of fluoride in the United States. More, he opened the field up to further scrutiny, writing that the vast majority of more than 80,000 commonly used industrial chemicals have never been tested for toxicity in children or even adults. And one of the biggest issues is dental fluorosis. Dental fluorosis continues to rise among fluoridated populations. And while the rate of dental caries has declined in fluoridated and non-fluoridated communities alike since before fluoridation began in 1945, fluorosis now affects as much as 70% of teenage population in some areas of the United States. A CDC study revealed that among adolescents aged 12 to 15, prevalence of dental fluorosis had increased for the years 1999-2004 compared to 1986-87, from 22.6% to 40.7%. I repeat, 40.7%. This is the highest rate since water fluoridation began. That's a 400% increase from 60 years ago. Now, scientist Weiner and his whole team concurred in a 2018 finding. Dental fluorosis, that's the modeling of the teeth, rates were up 31.6% between the periods 2001, 2002, and 2011, 2012 in adolescents 16 to 17 years of age. So with more communities consuming fluoridated water than ever, the medical establishments should be concerned that fluorosis outcomes in these communities are worsening over the years. And dental fluorosis is more than just unsightly discoloration. A 2018 Chinese study suggests the degree of dental fluorosis can actually be used as an exterior visual measure of fluoride-induced brain damage. The study also confirmed that even low moderate fluoride at 0.2 milligrams in the lowest case correlates to a decrease in 2.67 IQ points per 0.5 milligram increase in the drinking water fluoride. Hence, fluoride dumbs you down. Over the last 10 years, dozens of studies have been published by countries as diverse as China, India, Iran, and Mexico, confirming the link between water fluoridation and neurological damage, even in areas of relatively low fluoride concentration. A 2017 study of prenatal fluoride exposure in Mexico showed a marked IQ reduction with in utero exposure to fluoride concentrations as low as 0.15, and that those IQ reductions persist through ages 6 to 12 with every increase in prenatal fluoride exposure of 0.5. So it means in lay language that your developing fetus is being affected at the neurological level by mother's consumption of fluoride. Now, that's all I'm going to do today. It's a long article. It's over 60 pages. However, it's fully documented. We have almost 300 footnotes. So read the whole article, download it, share it with people, share it with your dentist. None of this is my opinion. There is no editorializing. It's strictly good quality science, and lots of it. But we've had a body politic hold on much of science, proprietary science, corporate science, capitalism science in the United States, in all fields. As a result, we cannot just automatically and without scrutiny trust what we're told. We must do our homework. So you got a leg up here. Now you know fluoride is not safe and it's not effective. We have had a major public health scam perpetrated upon us. The article explains why, who's involved, specific names and dates when it started. It's an industrial waste product. It serves no useful purpose, and it certainly shouldn't be in our body. By the way, I posted on my website today. I like to post videos that touch our heart and give us a good feeling, an optimistic feeling about life and people and how good people can be. And I also posted a picture today. And by the way, there was a group of people who saw, not in America, but it was in a country, and they saw a dog that was in trouble down a steep incline. So they, all strangers, they made a human chain holding each other's arms and went clear down and picked that dog up. You watch something like that, you think, wow. And then you see a dog jumping into a lake where there's a fawn that's drowning. The dog goes out, grabs the fawn around the neck, brings it in, and the fawn is saved. I love seeing this stuff. I love seeing things that remind us of our humanness and how wonderful these sentient creatures are to us. I also post pictures from Korea and from China of them torturing and killing and eating tens of thousands of dogs and cats to remind us this is going on. How can you build skyscrapers and the fastest bullet trains in the world and have some of the best scientific technology and still be eating dogs? What didn't evolve culturally and in your mindset? And that's not the only thing that's wrong with China. But we shouldn't be eating dogs and cats. We shouldn't be eating any sentient being. In fact, I showed a lot of videos, about 5 different videos of elephants and how the whole herd protects the newborn. In fact, the moment a newborn is dropped, not just the mother is there, but all the other elephants make a whole circle around that baby to protect it. And when it got into the water and started flowing down a river, therein goes not the mother, but another one. And they finally got it, and they all brought it, pushed it till it got up. Very smart creatures, wonderful creatures, loving creatures. When a person has an experience of being on a farm around these little creatures, you never want to, again, have a chicken or fish or hamburger because you know where it comes from. And this year, I intend to do a whole lot about that. I'll tell you more on an upcoming program how we're going to get the message out about respecting all life, not just animals, but each other's. How do you expect, by the way, to change people's minds? It was Buckminster Fuller, who I had on this program, who I interviewed many times, who said that, and Milo, one of our listeners, reminded me of this morning, so thank you, Milo. I appreciate you sending me a little note. And Buckminster Fuller said something to this effect. If you want to change a paradigm or something that's fundamentally flawed or wrong, don't fight it. Create a new one that's better. Make the one that you oppose obsolete. Wise words. What we're doing right now, and I've said this many times, I'll say it one more time before we go to a break and then our guest. We can put our energies in a positive place or a negative place. I believe that we are served best if we keep our energies positive, constructive, and looking for the solutions that will help not only us individually, but everyone else. Universal truths, not just personal truths. And that's why I believe in looking for the best places to live and learning other skills and preparing for a future that is uncertain. But it won't be uncertain if you prepare for it. Your health won't be uncertain if you prepare for it. But you have to put your energy into that, your commitment to it. On the other hand, as I've said, if we put all of our time and energy into hating Trump and demonizing everyone associated with him, everything he does, then we're not paying attention or creating something that can replace Trump and replace the Republicans and the corporate Democrats, replace them all. And I would rather see us replace rather than try to turn people into a mirror and let them see what they become. There was recently a study that showed that what the people want, what the people need, is not what politicians are providing with laws. It was Bernie Sanders who said that. You know, he goes out, and good for him. He goes out and he meets people, and he talks with them. Now, I respect that. I would have a different conversation with Bernie. I'd ask him, Bernie, I support your awareness of children's and adults' needs, going to college, letting them have a free public education. If they want to pay for an education, let them have a private one. You want to go Yale, Harvard, these are, private schools. That's your right. But what about all the people who want a quality education and can't afford it? Let them have public. Forgive their debts. He's for that. I respect that. I respect that he understands how terrible and mercenary the banking system is. But then again, he supports Israel, not the Palestinians. He supports the military-industrial complex. He supports the wars overseas. So, again, I believe that we can be different and look what we can align with and what we can't. What we need are people who are progressive on all issues. And we need that. And we're going to have that in the future because there's 100 million of us, independent thinkers, walking away from the Democratic Party, walking away from the Republican Party. Don't go from the Democrat to the Republican Party, man. That's a bad door to walk into. Or Republican Democratic Party. That's a bad door. Become independent and then look at all the freedom to express, to share, to create. And as Buckminster Fuller said, create a better system. And watch what happens when you actually have something better than the prevailing one. And that's where we're going. Back in a moment. Please stay with us. Nice to have you with us, everyone. By the way, for those of you who need some shirts and shoes and pants, I have a bunch here. They're free. Every year when I get out of touring and lecturing and doing documentaries and television work, I take everything I've had and give it away so I can start over. Don't like to accumulate things. So just give a call to our office and feel free to come down. Happy to share it with you. I've been doing this for 40 years. 646-926-5422 is our number. Also, we have a massive project coming on. I'm combining two films in the same shoot, one on poverty and one on the environment. We're going to do the most definitive film on the environment ever produced in history, and on poverty as well. And sometimes it's the same shoot, because sometimes the people most adversely affected by climate change are the poorest. In any case, for those of you living in Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and San Diego, we'll be coming out there. I'll be out there filming. However, we need people to do a lot of pre-filming work. I just don't show up and walk around the streets with a camera. That's very inefficient. I want to be able to find where we're going to film, locations, people we're going to film that have agreed to it in all areas, people who are living in their cars and vans, people who once had jobs and now don't, people who are poor, but they still try to maintain some dignity of life. Because we're led to believe that the only people who are poor in L.A. right now are drug addicts living in tents, controlled by gang members, paying them rent. True story. It's not true. Those people are there. They need help, not contempt. Help. But what about all the people who are poor senior citizens who can't afford a meal every day? They're invisible. I want to film the invisible people. So for those of you living in these areas, if you'd like to help, what you will do, you will go online and you will go to prnstudio@gmail.com, prnstudio@gmail.com, and give us a little background on yourself and where you live, and then we can have you help us do all this screening and research so that when we get there, we got a full itinerary. And the same is true for people in Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, and Philadelphia, and Atlanta. I'll be filming Reverend Barber down there, and a lot going on in Atlanta and Georgia. People with home foreclosures, people who worked for their whole life now had their job taken away by a visa person. I don't blame the person with a visa. They need to live too. But this was all about people making money and saving money at the cost of someone who had devoted and dedicated their life to working for a company. That's wrong. So we want to film them. Camden, New Jersey, if someone knows the mayor, we want to speak with them, because I'm willing out of my own pocket to set aside money to rehabilitate an entire block the way it should be done. I don't want any government agency tell me what to do, because they're idiots and they don't know how to do diddly squat. But let the people who live there do the work and then give them the benefit. Turn it over to them, where you have community gardens and you have drug rehab and you have assisted living and you have rehabilitation clinics, you have workshops, and you have guild shops to have plumbers and electricians show people new crafts. That's what should be there. I'm willing to do that. But we always get rebuffed by these politicians who somehow feel that a terrible, rotten to the core block that nobody lives on is just junk. Well, we can't give it to you. Why not? Why in the hell not? You want to show America we can de-ghettoize? Then let us start someplace. All I'm asking for is one block in the worst city, the worst community in America, that nobody wants to live there, nobody does live there. Let us take the worst of the worst and rehabilitate it, and then let everyone else in America say, see what happened here? We filmed it. Here's what happened. Here's how much money it took. Here's how it benefited the people. Here are the people. Now you can do it everywhere. So just an idea. So you want to participate in this film by helping us in locations. We're going to be Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Florida. That's just the East Coast swing. Then go to prnstudio@gmail.com and let us know. In our office, people will be in touch with you. Dane Wickington, geoengineering scientist, background in solar energy, highly regarded as one of the foremost experts and commentators on stratospheric aerosol geoengineering and solar radiation management, former employee of Bechtel Power Corporation, and worked on the first commercial solar plants in the United States. He's a climate scientist, and he has been in the documentary Michael Murphy's documentary Why in the World Are They Spraying? He lives on a wildlife preserve near Lake Shasta in Northern California, and he also has a show on called Global Alert News every Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's today at 2 p.m. on the Progressive Radio Network. Nice to have you back with us, Dane.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for your willingness to allow us to sound the alarm on the climate engineering issue, which too few people understand is a major factor in the climate disruption that is, statistically speaking, far worse than we've been told. Anthropogenic damage to the climate is exponentially worse than we have been told.
Dana, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then just you can complete right up to the end of the hour. And I'm going to, a warning to all of our stations all over the United States who carry this. Normally we go to 55 minutes, but I want Dane to give us insights. It's very important, up right up until the end of the hour. So we're going to extend our show. If you can't find, and then people can go right over to prn.fm and listen in, but otherwise we're going to have a little extended version. Here are the 3 questions. First, tell people what geoengineering is. Why are they doing it? Is there any upside to it? Is there a downside to it? What's in this particulate matter that's being sprayed, especially nanotechnologies, where the microorganisms are so small that you can't see them. But now we have people telling us they have aerosol flu symptoms, meaning geoengineering, the clouds they see being seeded, and then they start getting sick. They get congestion, they get lung infections. Is there a connection? We also want to know, is there any legitimacy in helping reverse some of the effects of global warming with geoengineering? Why are they doing it? Who's doing it? We're paying for it. And are there any checks and balances? Why did they lie about it for such a long time? For decades, they said it didn't exist. And then we saw inside a plane, so it did exist. And they said, well, it doesn't hurt you. I don't believe them. I want you to tell us the truth. And finally, I don't want people being sucked into that vortex of false claims being made on the Internet, the kind that Alex Jones and others would put up there that have no basis in reality. Tell us the truth so we know only the truth about geoengineering. The rest of the forum is yours.
First, let me back into those questions, if I may, Gary. Geoengineeringwatch.org is non-political. We deal with the science related to this issue, and that's absolutely essential if we're to gain traction in this battle. If I could backtrack to the political theater going on all sides of the fence, not just one, all sides of the fence. And while people are distracted with that political theater, the proverbial house is burning down around us. We face not global warming, something far, far worse, an abrupt climate collapse. That is the most correct scientific term for what is unfolding right now around us. In regards to the who, what, where questions, those are complex questions. On the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org, we have a link with 13 very short videos answering the most commonly asked questions on climate engineering. But ultimately, the who question leads back to those who print the money, the central bankers. In regards to what is in this mix and what climate engineering is, it's the intentional intervention in Earth's life support systems, we are told, to mitigate climate change. But in fact, although climate engineering can and is creating short-term, highly toxic cooldowns, those cooldowns come at the cost of an even worsened overall warming. You can't intervene with these systems without a very, very negative result. In regards to the symptoms people feel, absolutely positively related to climate engineering, not just climate engineering, not stating that's the only source of toxic particulate matter in our atmosphere, but it is the single greatest source of toxic particulate matter. And these particulates are exponentially more harmful than most others because, one, they're incredibly small. As you stated, the smaller the particle, the more lethal it is. And we're talking about toxic materials starting with aluminum nanoparticulates named on climate engineering patents. And we know they're in the air column because we have tests from all over the globe to prove this metal is coming down through the air column. We know in the case of CARB tests in the western U.S., testing from particulates from China, that these materials are not coming from Asia. They're of local origin, and certainly, again, they match the climate engineering patents exactly. In regards to toxicity, as you correctly stated earlier in your broadcast, the unquestionable toxicity of fluoride and other elements and the damage it's doing, we can, if we try hard enough, many people can avoid fluoride, can avoid vaccinations. We can't not breathe. All of us are inhaling the toxic heavy metals, chemicals, polymers, and particulates related to climate engineering. All of us. There is nowhere to escape that fallout, and we have synergistic toxicity, Gary, as you know, I know you know, I'm just for your listeners, the individual toxicities of these metals bad enough on their own. When you blend them together, the toxicity can increase exponentially. We all have mercury in us. We know that from multiple sources, including coal-fired power plants. Now we all have aluminum in us. The combination of those two metals can increase toxicity as much as 10,000%, 100 times worse. So again, this is my focus on this issue because environmentally speaking, this is the greatest and most immediate threat we face short of nuclear cataclysm. And our time horizon, Gary, on the current trajectory, if we do not change course on many fronts, but again, the single greatest factor at this point being the intentional climate intervention programs, mathematically speaking, we are all in a very, very short time horizon. And I hope people get past the political theater that we see every day and people from all sides of the fence, not just one, and realize that if we don't allow the planet to respond on its own to the damage done, and we don't cease the anthropogenic damage to the planet from countless sources, but climate engineering, again, being mathematically the greatest at this point, it's going to be game over in the very short-term horizon. I know that's very unpleasant news, but I'm trying to wake people up to the fact that we have to focus on priorities. If our head's on fire, metaphorically, we have to ignore other issues. We have to deal with this issue. And again, the gravity of this issue can't be overstated. We're perhaps weeks away from an ice-free Arctic. That will release exponentially more methane into the atmosphere. Climate engineers trying to hide that. You asked the why question. And that is a big part of the why, trying to mask the severity of climate collapse from the population until the last possible moment while making that collapse far worse, not better.
All right, just so people can understand what you're saying, let's just use California, because I believe California is one of the 3 most commonly and heavily sprayed states with these airplanes. How does that spray, which includes barium, by the way, how does that actually impact climate change? What is their justification for doing all this spraying? What are they saying that they're doing that is good, and what have you found that they're doing that is not?
In regard to this issue, I want to stress to your listeners, it is imperative to use the science terms. Avoid the, quote, chemtrails term, which leads straight to conspiracy theory and hoax, and that's what the power structure and the media they control want us to do. We must use the science terms. In regards to the conditions here in the West, we know from NASA satellite imagery that they are absolutely, completely blocking the hydrological cycle off the U.S. West Coast in the Eastern Pacific. We have NASA satellite imagery that is shocking. You don't need to know anything about meteorology to see the blanket grid pattern spraying off our coast every single day, which disrupts the hydrological cycle. And again, the stated purpose to mitigate our warming planet. But in fact, after 70 years of climate engineering, we know, and it's not just climate engineering, Gary, it's being used for weather warfare. There's no question about that. Every single Middle Eastern country with resources that's been destabilized and toppled since 9/11 has undergone a once in 1,000 year drought. And as you probably know, we've had the leaders, militaries of these countries like Iran stating on the record that NATO, Western powers are blocking their precipitation. The same is happening in the U.S. West. We can speculate on the agendas. I don't claim to know all the agendas being carried out, but what I can say with certainty, based on all available data, the fact that climate engineering operations are blocking precipitation from the U.S. West is absolutely, positively inarguable. Let's look at the insects. One final point, and I'll give this back to you, as a harbinger of where we're all headed. We have stated at geoengineeringwatch.org that there was a bigger factor killing the bees and the insects than what was being addressed. Many people address glyphosate. That's a problem, yes. Radio frequency is a problem, yes. But we knew the heavy metals were a bigger factor. And now we have peer-reviewed study, Gary. Your listeners can look this up if they search bees aluminum. Peer-reviewed study to prove the bees are dying of massive aluminum exposure, dying of symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being. And if anyone thinks that they are not being subjected to the same materials, the same bioaccumulation of these metals in their systems, they're sadly mistaken. All of us at this point are literally being subjected what amounts to biological warfare, in addition to the damage being done to the biosphere as a whole from these programs.
Dane, thank you very much for giving us some insights. And again, this is just the beginning of the discussion. You need to go to Dane's site, geoengineeringwatch.org, Geo, engineeringwatch.org, and then read the articles from peer-reviewed literature. Dane is not a conspiracy theorist. He has not been In other words, discredited on any level. What he's telling you, he can back up. So thank you very much, Dane, and they can listen to your program later today at 2 o'clock for more.
Thank you for your voice in this battle, Gary.
That is Dane, and his last name is Wigington, Wigington. I'm Gary Null. We're out of time. Thank you all for listening. Have a nice day.
Hear me now.